Well, Selene, as you can see, you have two people who dressed up in costumes of characters
Yeah, I'll
from
take
the
the laugh out
film.
there. It means your monocle.
I love it.
So we're so blessed and honored that you took the time to talk to us about this little undiscovered Troma gem, and it's
Thank
so,
you so much for having me here.
of course. And so just tell us a little about, but before we start talking about that, I've had this, I'll introduce myself. I'm James from Cult Musicals, and then I'll let my two favorite girlfriends introduce themselves.
I'm Hades Nuts, Mary Poppins.
And we always watch cult musicals and analyze it, and sometimes we try to get people from those cult musicals, some who are somehow connected, to talk about it. And Spidarlings has been on my radar for a bit, and I think it's really important in terms of not being only a horror musical, but one of the first, if not only the only queer Troma movie, which is really important in itself.
There used to be Vegas in Space as well, which I would count as a queer drama movie before me.
It was called what?
Vegas in Space.
Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the only queer Troma musical.
That's
Because we
true.
have analyzed other Troma musicals, Poultrygeist. We
Yeah.
haven't done Cannibal the Musical yet.
Oh, I hope so. I love it.
But in terms of Spidarlings, it's really important because I feel like your little niche underground musical broke the mold and broke the barriers that Troma had in place. Because Troma is, of course, known to be very male oriented,
Yeah.
very male dominated. Toxic Avenger, Cannibal the Musical, Poultrygeist, Class of Nukem High. So, how did you sell Spidarlings to Troma? Did you do the film first and then choose Troma to distribute it, or how did you get
Yeah,
involved with Troma?
we made the film first, and I casted Lloyd Kaufman in a small cameo in the film, so it was on his radar, obviously. And when it was finished, I asked him if he wanted to see it, and Drama Fangirl Dream Come True, they distributed it.
That's so cool.
Which is really great. And I don't know if you realize how great it was that, Troma had come full circle and started to be, very inclusive in terms of musicals. I
Yeah.
mean, Spidarlings is completely original in terms of its plot. Where did this idea come from?
Um, Actually, I was working beforehand on a different movie script as a script doctor for a TV project, and I just hated the project so much, and it just really depressed me and just threw me down. So I just wanted to write something that was fun and something that I would personally want to watch, and it was just more sort of like a secret side project that I was working on the side, which I never thought was going to get made. And then I just thought, like, I'm going to make it myself because it's not a script I could have sold to anybody, I think.
I
And
mean, it's very original. It's very original. I mean, not only is it a horror musical, but it has lesbians and spiders and drag queens. Oh my. But it is original, and it went under the radar for a bit, but then with the rise of Troma Now and different streaming platforms in the States like Tubi and Freevee, it's starting to get watched again. So with it being on these platforms, do you have more, I guess, is it on people's radar now more than it used to be?
I definitely think so. That has got more on the radar for people in the last 2, 3 years now. It's a rather an old film now, almost a decade old. So I'm surprised suddenly that this whole new interest is starting, and people are starting to just contact me and say, "Oh, I saw your movie," and I was like, "Really?" So it's really cool and unexpected, kind of, that it's blowing up now again.
But that's what happens with, all the cult musicals that we love. Maybe they're too far ahead of their time, or they might not have got the distribution that they needed or deserved, and they go under the radar, but people discover them because there's such a want and a desire for underground musicals. I mean, our whole niche and our whole thing is musicals that are overlooked by society and maybe edgy, maybe tawdry, maybe trashy, but our elk loves to embrace these musicals. And there's just so many things that make this movie hilarious and so original. Um, so tell us a little bit about production. So did you write the entire film and direct it yourself?
Yes, I wrote, directed, and co-produced the film.
Damn. That's a lot of
We're
hats Wow. to wear. Yeah.
sort of a small filmmaking family. We do everything together, which has kind of been
So it all just came out of your mind. Was there a precursor to Spidarlings, or you just like, let me make the most original movie that I can think of?
a lot of it was based on my own life. I had problems with landlords all my life, so the idea to make the landlord as a villain sort of came early on, I think. And I had friends of mine who were sex workers or worked in like sleazy bars, so everybody just came to me with stories about all those creeps they've met. So basically, it was kind of trying to be a movie very much about me and my friends, just more surreal and with music.
And are you a horror fan
Oh,
as
yes.
well as?
I love schlocky and trashy horror movies. That was really like my go-to thing. And of
Were
course, I
you?
love musicals as well, so it made sense.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I was gonna ask. So, Spidarlings could have easily just been another Troma horror film, but what encouraged you and what inspired you to make it a musical?
The idea to make it a musical basically came out on about already from the very beginning of it, and I had no idea how to make a musical. I've never done anything like this before, so we weren't really sure how we're gonna get all those songs there. Like I wrote down lyrics, ideas for everything, but we didn't really have a full-time songwriter until I casted Tiffany Wells there in the role as a drag queen Gina there in the film, and she told me, well, if you're looking for a composer, I know this a friend of mine called Jeff Christian. He could maybe write a song for me to sing. So we contacted him and he wrote a song for Gina and we recorded it and it was just brilliant. And he asked, is there anything else I could do? And I said, could you write us another 13 songs?
Yes.
So it turned into this lesbian spider horror musical, and it's great because I tell people, I'm like, you have to see Spidarlings. And the way I sell it to people, I was like, it's a queer anarchist musical that's horror about spiders. And then, of course, Hades and Mary's favorite point of it is in a shitty landlord.
Oh my
I
goodness.
think
Like,
that's what they take from it.
So
So when you
he was so patient. 2 years, no rent, and 3 months. I've got so many thoughts about that landlord. First of all, ew, landlords. But
Yeah, I agree.
moving forward from that, like 2 years no rent in the song. I'm like, yep, this is a landlord singing something. Oh. It was perfect for the setting. Loved that. And
it's
like
a true story. There was a landlord that I didn't pay for 2 years the rent.
that's a true story. That
Yeah.
makes it okay, that makes it so much better. It's like I didn't get rent from you for 2 years. Where is
That's unprecedented.
that's amazing. I love that it's a true story.
And I love how the
Definitely.
characters are so blasé about it. They're like, go away.
Yeah, and they're just like whatever, just
How
the face.
dare you?
Get
Make
here.
it 3.
Where do the characters come from? Because I mean, some of the people we talk to, like, we've talked to quite a few. Either the characters they play or the characters they write come from either their own inner workings of their mind and their reflections of who they are, or people. So where did Eden and Matilda come from in your mind?
Eden was very much sort of an alter ego for myself at the time. And the character of Matilda was partially based on an ex-partner of mine, and as soon as Rahel Kapsaski started to be involved in the film and play Matilda, she added her own little flares and touches to it as well. So she makes marionettes and dolls, so we right away use that in the film as well. So and little touches like this, like I would write the character, and then once it was cast and met, we would change the character and sort of see what can people do, what can they bring to the table that is unique in their own thing, basically.
Yeah, I love
And
the marionettes
cartoons,
are so cool.
Yeah, the marionettes were like really cool. I liked
like those
seeing
parts,
them. They were
yeah.
very cool. And the animation was a lot of fun too,
Mhm.
except for the part where it gave me a seizure.
I'm sorry.
I was unprepared for that. Like, if I was warned beforehand, I'd wear my cool sunglasses. That kind of helps, but
Which part is
Yeah.
it? So
Yeah,
annoying in
the
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 future.
spider taking advantage of
Yeah.
Eden portion with the red and white flashing, and it just gave me a little
Sorry.
moment there. And I'm like, we gotta pause the movie. We gotta watch this tomorrow, and try again.
But
I
it
mean, it was
is.
beautiful.
It was cool.
beautiful,
It
but-
was I got stuck watching it because I was like, this is too interesting. Oh no.
Oh no.
So there are like the puppets and there's the cartoons and there's so many different flavors in terms of international flavor. You've got British flavor, you've got different. What is your background in terms of what you were bringing to that particular film?
What do you mean with background? Like,
Oh, I mean, where you from? Pardon?
Sorry?
Oh, I mean, like, for instance, the character of Matilda. I wasn't able to place her accent, so she's bringing her her background in terms of it, because I know it's like there's characters that are British, and there's different characters from different parts. There's an American. There's different characters from different parts of the world.
Rahel and
So it's
I are
like an
both Greek.
international, global. Pardon?
Rahel, who plays Matilda, and myself are both from Greece.
Oh, awesome! So you're bringing that background as well, and so it's like a huge, diverse international cast, which makes it so interesting because you have different backgrounds bringing their own distinct styles and their own distinct interests, and I think it's fascinating. um with the music has its own different um sound, and it's the cartoons and the marionettes. I just think it's such an explosion of color, and it's hard to like narrow it down and nail it down to one particular genre, because there's so many different genres that it is, and I just think it's so original. And I'm so glad that it's getting recognition, because it takes a couple of times to really get it and to understand it, especially with the dialogue and especially with the plot. Because um, going into it, I had the expectation that the spiders were somehow going to be the villain, or the spiders were going to somehow play a larger part than they do. But what I like about it, it's about real people who are dealing with real world problems. And I guess the supernatural sort of science fiction aspect is just I guess, a subplot. I think the main problems that they have in their life are with each other, with their relationships, with their landlords, and with their careers and things. And I think that's the kind of horror films that I like, and the kind
That's
of
what
horror
I
music.
also think makes horror great, if it touches on real things and on real problems and on real issues in real life. Just uses the horror, the fantastical elements to sort of allow people to almost address terrible things in a more safe space, kind of almost. I find something comforting in horror movies, or putting everything through a horror movie lens, if that makes
It
sense.
is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I think, especially with like this particular movie, and like you touched upon, if you focus a lot on world war problems and the for instance, Hereditary, like the movie Hereditary and the movie The Witch, um, and especially even with Spidarlings, the problems and the issues that the characters are going through in the real world pale in comparison to, I mean, the horror elements and
Yeah.
the things that they go through supernaturally pale in comparison to the things that they have to deal with in real life. And it makes them stronger to be able to deal with the supernatural elements. So the spider aspect of them being able to deal with it, actually, there's a sense of empowerment, I think, by the time that the two female leads go through all of that, and the landlord and, lack of funds and the relationship issues they may have with each other, they're able to deal with this whole supernatural element and aspect. Was it important for you to make something straight horror with some kind of supernatural aspect, as well as focus on people who had real world problems?
Most of the times whenever I write, it always ends up as a horror movie eventually. So even if I want to write something straight or drama, eventually it just goes off into horror stuff. So I just accepted it, that this is where it's gonna go once I start writing anything, really. So, but like I said again, I think it's the horror elements allow me to write about parts in my life that I wouldn't have been able to address just as plainly through a drama or through a comedy or whatever. So like a, how do I say it?
Yeah, it's like horror allows us. Horror is very cathartic. I've always found horror films to be very somber and
Same.
took comfort in horror films.
Like when I'm
And I
depressed, I
think
put on a horror movie that I love. That's my go-to feel good, safe place.
so. When you did this, and how long did it take to shoot this particular musical?
It took me 5 years to make the film in proper Murphy's Law fashion. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. We ran out of money a couple of times. We had equipment and costumes stolen. There were accidents. A cast member has passed away during the production. So
Wow.
whenever we thought we were gonna get somewhere, we suddenly found ourselves crashing another wall. But I never wanted to give up on it, so we just reshot or continued shooting whenever we had new money or whenever we couldn't manage it again. The
Wow.
landlord was originally supposed to be played by filmmaker Ken Russell, who passed
Hmm.
away just 2 months before we were starting production. So from the very beginning, everything just went chaotic. And of course, this was also my first feature film, so I made many mistakes along the line. Just threw myself in the hot water and just figured it out as I went along. Like I had no idea how to do special effects or how to do a musical or anything. It was just like, let's figure it out.
So it took 5 years to complete. So did you just stop at a certain point and then come back to where you left off? Is that how it, when you were able to get more financing and things of that nature?
Yeah, basically so. And sometimes also just like whenever somebody had, sorry, noise. So whenever we had like money, I found money again, we started filming again a weekend, and then maybe a month nothing would happen, and then we would try and gather something again together. So it just happened sort of in little sporadic moments, basically over the 5 year period.
Well, it's good that you never gave up and that you had enthusiasm and you had passion for it. Because it seems like all the cards were stacked again and all the deck was stacked against you and your cast to not continue to make this movie. And a lot of people aren't resilient. They would have given up. They would have said, oh, this is not my calling. Let me, especially with, death, with running out of financing. So I applaud you for continuing to make the film and go back and shoot it, because it feels like it was all shot continuously, that it was all shot at the same time. It doesn't feel like there was such a big gap.
There are some scenes where like a character leaves the room and then 5 years later enters the hallway.
I mean, it does take a couple of watches to really understand what's happening, because you keep waiting for the supernatural aspect to happen. But then you realize, as you hit upon and you touched upon, it's not the supernatural elements that are important. It's what's happening, to the two female main leads. It's what's happening in their lives. And I will say that, it's kind of timely, especially in the climate that we live in, and, the economic situation that we live in a particular moment. It's more timely now to see, you know, a couple struggling and how it affects them, how it affects their relationship. And it's really kick-ass that it's in a queer couple, because you don't really see that. I mean, sometimes in queer themed movies, the queer couples are either super chaotic
Yeah.
or either super loving with no issues at all. And you can be both. You can have issues and you can love each other. And I think it's really cool, especially in the economic situation that we live in, that you can go back and say, actually, we're struggling and they're struggling, but they're not letting their financial situation break them up, because sometimes that can be the nail in the coffin to a lot of couples. And I think it's really cool and really kick-ass that they are able to survive the situation that they're in.
From the very beginning on, I wanted the film to have a happy ending at the end. And when I started writing, I knew it was going to end with a kiss, because it's a musical, it has to end with a kiss. So I think a lot of times when we see, especially in horror films, sort of queer people, always they end up being mistreated, killed. There is very rarely like a happy ending just for like a young queer couple in horror or any films, really. Even like now that we're going seeing more and more queer cinema rise again in a still the kind of dramatic sad endings, breakups, and everything continues to prevail in cinema. So I wanted something that is, in my own way, in my own twisted way, a happy ending.
It is a happy ending,
Yeah.
despite
It is a
the
happy ending.
yeah, despite these killer, toxic, humanoid mutant spiders. I mean, they serve their masters. They serve their masters in terms of, you know, getting rid of the situation that they, you know, that they were caught up in. So it's like it's actually a really cool ending, and I'd be really interested to see where these characters go on to and where they go. But we can talk about that in a minute, because I'm sure every film writer, including yourself, when they make a film, they sometimes they try to think about where their characters would be now. I'm sure your characters never leave you in
Yeah.
terms of, I'm sure your characters never leave you. Regardless of anything you've ever written, I'm sure your characters still remain in your mind. And you wonder, I wonder what they were up to today. Or maybe you do know what they would be up to today.
Well, after spending so much time, especially with these characters, they have become like a big central part of my life. And also, since I shot the whole film in my bedroom, I basically lived in their room the entire time. So they became part of me and will continue to become stay a part of me. But I'm not going to do a sequel. Whatever happens to them stays in my mind alone.
Because I do, because I've written characters when I was, you know, little, and I like sometimes you have all these stories and you want to keep it to yourself because it's very cathartic and it's very comforting to you. Sometimes, you know, fantasy and fiction and writing allows us to escape reality, and then we become really protective of our characters. So I kind of, that's a really interesting answer to, you know, where they would be, but you want to keep it to yourself because
I think it would just disappoint other people if I would tell them. Everybody has the right to make up their own story of where they think they will go from here.
yeah, where would they be? And because this movie was released in 2016, right?
We started shooting in 2011 and it was released in 2016.
So, how soon did you finish the film before you released it, when it was released?
It was we first had a screening in London in October 2016, and then it's kind of sat on the shelf for 2 years until Troma picked it up in 2018.
Which is great. This is a perfect Troma movie. It's as if you made it with Troma in mind. As we were discussing before you came in, Troma has a very targeted sort of way of making movies. They're meant to shock, they're meant to scare, they're meant to entertain, and they're meant as forms of escapism. So the way that you've made the film, it's really interesting that you made the film first and then Troma picks it up, because it's it fits right on the shelf of Troma movies.
Like I said, I've always been a big fan of Troma and schlocky horror movies and straight to VHS horror movies, so this is my world.
Hades and Mary, did you have any initial reactions when I first introduced you to this film and you all watched it?
Other than initial with the flashing lights and having a seizure immediately, like the credits opening start, I'm like, whoa, let me just go get a drink, you know, and I'll come back when the credits are over. And then I thought I was fine. I thought it was gonna be credits. And then the animation later on with the flashing lights also. But other than seizure inducing with no warning.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. You know, we live, we learn, we move forward from that. I loved all the little, like, there was little hidden treasures. I had to write it down so I didn't forget. Like the I'm toasted on the fridge. I
Yeah.
love that. I don't know why. It just was so funny.
Every time.
And then sorry, I was distracted by incredible boobage. The landlord singing was great. The song is so uncomfortable. I'm a man of my word. Ew. I'm just going through my notes here. I love it. Oh, and then I said this guy is cunt in regards to the guy with the leather jacket, the biker dude, the murderer fella. Oh, the grocery store song was fantastic.
Yeah, that one that really slaps.
You know,
Like
I
that one.
compared it to the hot patootie of the film.
Yeah.
Thank
You
you.
know, it was like the mood has changed. They've got money. They're getting snacks. They're gonna get a mop, an extendable mop.
It was great. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. I could tell y'all had like such a good, like fun time with that thing.
My personal favorite was the fairy godmother. I gotta say,
Yes.
I gotta
Oh my
say,
goodness, yes.
bad boys don't get wishes, so fuck you.
That
That
was
was the best. That I could use that line in my daily life forever. She
They're
was
so
top notch.
mhm.
Working with
there are
Linda Miller,
so
the fairy godmother, was so much fun because everything she just said on set just made me laugh so much.
Yeah, I can see
Absolutely.
And
that.
sadly,
Yeah.
she passed away last year, so
Aw.
Aw.
At least she's
I
immortalized.
feel like I've seen her in other stuff too.
she was on several British TV shows like Britain Has Talent. She was
Okay.
England's oldest stand-up comedian at the age of 80.
I bet we have seen.
oh
I
wow.
had to have seen her in other
Yeah.
medias before. She was hilarious.
Oh,
And that role, perfect for her. I'm your fairy godmother. Well, you're a bad boy, so fuck you.
Where do
I
these
had to-
lines come from? Where do these lines come from? Your mind?
Probably.
I love it. Oh my goodness. Mr. Monocle. They
It's
call
mostly
him
once I
Mr.
make myself laugh while writing, I know I have something there.
And it's a very dark sense of humor, which dark humor is hilarious because if you can't laugh at life, there's no point of even making a movie. Sometimes, I mean, the thing about Troma, even Poultry Guys and Cannibal the Musical and Spidarlings, there's some scenes that you're like, oh, but the thing is, it's trying to get you to laugh about life because if you can't laugh at yourself and you can't laugh at life, how are you going to get through it? And that's why, like, it's funny to make humor out of situations that aren't naturally funny because you have to laugh at things. And my favorite line ever, because this would be me. I don't do well with emotions sometimes. So when people come to me for advice, I don't know how to give it. So I love when Matilda and Eden are like hinting at they want to move in with the drag queen. What was the drag queen's name?
Gina.
Gina.
What was her
Tiffany
name?
Lights.
Gina.
And she says, you know, I heard that, I heard that if you're homeless in Thailand, you could just live on the beach. That's so you. I love that.
I've actually gotten that from somebody.
Oh,
That's a line from real life. Like I was asking somebody for money, and they actually said, "You know, in Thailand, if you're homeless, you could just live by the beach."
no, so that's sort of like a condescending sort of nod to something that you heard in
Yes.
real life.
I love it. Oh my goodness. I love that this came from real life because that adds a whole other layer of like depth to the film that I was missing beforehand. That this is all life events from your life and your friends' lives. I love that it makes a lot more sense now hearing that from you that like these are some of your life experiences and your friends' life experiences that you put into the movie. So every so often I'd be like, huh, it's a little, like something. It just seems like somebody's experience because that's somebody's experience that I'm watching, and then we're going on with the plot again. Like it's great. I love that.
So you were inspired not only by your life and like things that happen in your life, but also people in your life. So the characters are the characters based on real people that you knew as well?
Some of them, yes, like Victor Sobchak, who plays the owner of the club. He's basically just based on himself. Like he used to be my boss like a few years before when I was working in theater. So when I handed him the script and he read it, he just basically, so I basically just blame myself.
Yes. Love that.
Where all was the shot?
Sorry?
Where all was this shot? Where was the film shot?
Half of it was shot in Ilford, where I used to live at the time, and the rest of it was shot in Soho, like the club scene, which was shot at the Phoenix Artists Club in Soho, which is this beautiful little underground club there. So they were nice enough to give us the space over the period of like 5 years.
Can I just say that the Charlie Brown noise with the cop was amazing?
Yeah,
An excellent choice.
it was excellent. Yeah, because it's a cop. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
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 There's so many political statements that you make in this movie that I think get lost on the first view. And then, but there's like so many, there just isn't, I wanted to say, wasn't there a Rocky Horror poster in your room?
Yes.
Yes, I noticed it and I freaked out and I was like, no.
So there's so many nods to things, but there's so many political statements as well. And, 2011 Britain and the world is very different, and 2016 Britain and the world is very much different than America and Britain in 2024. So I can only imagine if you wrote and produced and released Spidarlings in 2024, what would that look like? I've never asked that before to a guest, but what would Spidarlings look like now if it was Spidarlings in 2024?
I have no idea. That's a good question. So it would be maybe a little bit darker, even, and even queerer.
Yeah.
There was one joke that I made in the film. I don't know, report. I wrote in Prime Minister Boris Johnson, which at the time when I wrote it, I thought it was be a goofy joke, like, haha, Boris Johnson, Prime Minister, and then it really happened. Sorry.
Art imitates life.
It's all your fault.
I gave people the idea, maybe. Who knows?
I always say art imitates life, but art predicts life as well. Art definitely predicts life.
I
Like-
didn't want to predict that one.
Especially
So when this was released and Troma distributed it, was there any screenings? I mean, because the London gay queer scene and the London art scene would be a perfect place for this to be screened. Were there any screenings when it first came out, or did it go straight to Troma?
We had a couple of selected screenings. Like I said, we had one in London, and then we did one at Worcester Pride, Pride screening for the film, and then we had a couple of international festivals, but there was never like a proper run at any cinema.
Well, I think now, especially with the need and the desire and want in theaters for, I mean, there's like the Prince Edward, was the Prince Charles Theater
Yeah.
in London that does like Rocky Horror shock treatment. It screens all these things that no other theater would screen because its fan base and its consumers are people who are after cult musicals. They're after cult movies. They're not after to see the biggest blockbuster. They want something new. They want to discover something new. Have there ever been any talks or rumblings or whispers that Spidarlings could make a resurrection and get screened again?
Not recently, but who knows, with the new interest and with coming up about it, so it's possible. I'm definitely all up for it.
Yeah, because it's now on. I know it's streaming in the States. And it's now on Troma Now, which is like the Disney Plus version of Troma. And they've done a really great job of introducing it on Troma and explaining what it is on Troma and saying it's queer, it's anarchist, it's horror. And I think that's really great because I mean, for a very, very long time, Troma was very, as much as I love Troma, Troma was very targeted towards a very specific demographic. And I think, Spidarlings was great that I think it broke the mold. Because I'll let Renee and Hades say this. They're not the biggest fans of Poultrygeist, which is the other Troma musical. But I think having them watch that and then watching this, it shows how far Troma has come. Do y'all agree in terms of
drink of water?
Yes, it was. Yeah, so Poultrygeist was 2006, 2007 when that one was released. And it was just out to assault you with how racist, Islamophobic, I could go down the line. It's all of the isms, and
Shock
it's
value,
all
yeah.
for shock value. And like Spidarlings had shock value without the bitter taste of racism, etc. in my mouth. And that was fantastic. So you can do shock horror without being completely offensive.
but I think it's great how Troma's embraced diversity
Yeah.
and how they're
Absolutely.
inclusive now.
Yeah,
I mean, was
especially
it
because in Poultrygeist they totally made fun of. There was some homophobia in there as well. It was very present, at least in one part, and I was like, "Ooh, it's uncomfortable." Oh, in 2006, this probably would have been up my alley, but people grow. It's been more than 20 years. It's been like 20 years.
I haven't seen Poltergeist in 20 years, so I really don't remember anything about it except maybe one or two grosser scenes that stick
Yep.
out in my mind. But in
Yep,
terms of
it was
plot
it
or
was
dialogues or songs,
it's called
I can't
repression.
remember
Yeah.
anything.
I
Gone.
It's one of those things like if you removed all of the completely offensive things of that film, it would be a fantastic, like I love the grossness. I love the shockingness of it, but I didn't like the racism, homophobia, the phobias. Just shoo, get out of here. We don't need that. But otherwise, I enjoyed Poultrygeist, other than the parts you have to forget, you know.
But I'm sure it's not lost on you being such a huge fan of Troma and to have your first film and for it to be so diverse and inclusive and queer to be embraced and produced by Troma. I'm sure that wasn't lost on you. I'm sure I can only imagine how you felt when Troma's like, yeah, we'll totally produce this.
It was just completely a dream come true. I just didn't believe it at all. It was like, yes.
And then Lloyd, of course, Lloyd Kaufman, who is Troma incarnate, he's in the film. How did that come about?
Since we talked about the Prince Charles, I actually met Lloyd the first time at the Prince Charles Theater during the premiere of Father's Day, the drama movie, and we started talking there, and we just asked, "You want to be in the film?" And he said, "Like, sure, give me a script." So we emailed him the script, and the next time he was in London, we just filmed it quickly in one afternoon while in between his usual arrangements he had to do there.
That was so cool of him. And that was just amazing to sort of, they always say don't meet your heroes, but I always say do meet your heroes because you never know how nice they are. And you never know how willing they are to be part of something. Because I think art, especially the people that we've emailed like yourself, there's always that fear that they're going to say no. And that, or there's always the fear that it may never reach them. But I always say that, most people want to talk about their art and they want to share their art and they want to talk about behind the scenes things and they want to talk about the legacy. And that's why I always try to tell people meet your heroes because you never know how they are and how receptive they're going to be to do the things that you ask of them, to do an interview or, and in your case, to work with someone as big as him in the horror community. That had to be for your first film. That had to be such an amazing moment for you.
It absolutely was an amazing moment, and I agree with you. It's like go out and meet your heroes. There's nothing to lose except them being an asshole, but I've been rather fortunate so far. Like most of my heroes that I have met have always been all really lovely. Like I got to meet John Waters a few years ago and it was just absolutely amazing. And so go meet your heroes if you can.
You said John Waters and they clutched their pearls because they're big John Waters fans.
Yes, I'm a huge fan. I love John Waters so much. And I was like, I want to meet John Waters. I'm like, James, you have to message John Waters and maybe we can talk about Hairspray.
How was John Waters when you met him? Did you tell him about Spidarlings?
No, I didn't. I met him at the screening of Boom, which he was presenting in Liverpool. So I just walked up to him and I was extremely just frightened and shivering. So I just pulled myself together and said, Prince Summer, Fall, Winter, Spring. And he got a big smile out of him from that.
So now that Spidarlings is on Troma, and now it's getting introduced to a brand new generation of people who consider it to be fresh and to be new. And there is a desire for queer media and for queer musicals and for queer horror, because the queer community has always found solace and peace within horror. I don't know the why, but all queer people, for instance, or a lot of queer people have always found such solitude in horror, and we felt it's something that we've always gravitated towards. I'm not quite sure why it is. I think it's I couldn't even give you an explanation of why we all love horror. But
I think horror, first of all, belongs to the queers. It's ours. We claim it. And I think there's something comforting in because horror films often deal with the other. So I think there's always, at least I always felt very connected to monsters since I was a kid. There was always something where I could see myself in these horrible creatures, basically.
Even Frankenstein's monster, a misunderstood being and a bit misunderstood creature. And I think, the queer community always embraces
Yeah.
a lot of these musicals that were forgotten, or a lot of the musicals that we embrace. I mean, even Poultrygeist and all the musicals that society just forgot. There's something about those things. I think they're glamorous, they're cheeky, they're funny, and the queer community has always embraced them and never consider them too bad or so bad that they're good. They're just musicals to us that we love. And to other society, and may these musicals that we embrace may be bad or so bad that they're good, but to us, they're just musicals that we love. And we tend to be very protective of things that society discard. And that's why they say like a queer classic, even though it may not have any queer characters at all. Um, there's just something about you hit on as the otherness or the rejection aspect. It's that we embrace things and protect things
Yeah.
and nurture things that other people might discard.
I never liked the whole it's so bad, it's good kind of attitude. Like when I love a film, I love it sincerely. It's not because I want to laugh at it. I never like the kind of cynical attitude that people have often towards like horror movies, musicals, B movies, etc. It's like there's so much beauty and genuine beauty to be found in those films, in those genres, that is just so outside of mainstream cinema or respectable cinema or whatever people want to call it. Yeah. So I think a lot of it is just the attitude that they go in with, the close-minded views of it, because there's
And
like
people might it's kind of funny, like you said, you sort of hit on, and it's kind of funny how these movies get rediscovered maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, and then people are like, oh, we'll have a Criterion collection or we'll have a Q&A, and it's a forgotten classic, but the queer community and the cult community are like, that's not a forgotten classic. We've loved it since
Yeah.
day one. We've never, even these musicals, I could totally see Spidarlings having a screening with a shadow cast, with people dressing up as the characters,
That'd be wonderful. I'd love that.
and for you to do a Q&A. And I've never asked this question as well, but since it is a very overt queer musical, how did it help you in your own journey with your queerness? Did that make sense? Did Spidarlings do anything for you in terms of your own queerness?
At the time I was making Spiderlings, I still haven't completely figured myself out. So Spiderlings again gave me a safe playing field where I could experiment and play around with ideas of gender and mock it, celebrate it, dissect it, and in return ask questions and explore things that I couldn't really just openly ask or talk about. But so I found um, a more hidden way to talk about it openly. And then basically once the film was over, it was like, what am I gonna do now with my life? And then I just transitioned.
And that's kind of great that, maybe this whole process of making this movie, and the start and the stop and the stop and the start, and the length of time that it took to make the film, and the setbacks and the resilience that you and all the cast must have had to make it, helped you on your own journey to figure out who you are. And I think that's really cool. And I would really love to hear for you to write like an op-ed about how this film helped you, and how, was it a hard sell? Was it hard to sell this movie to distributors because it was queer and this was 2011, which was a very different world than we live now? Was it
No
a hard sell?
distributor or financer really wanted to hear about it. If they were into horror, then it was too much of a musical or too queer. If they were into queer movies, it was too horrific and weird for them. So there was just nowhere a niche really for that. Like even like with queer production videos like Wolf Video, it was just way too weird for them to touch or look at. So I kind of felt like I was making a film that didn't have a space or place anywhere really.
And
So
then Troma found it,
yeah, I
which
was
is the
forward to it.
perfect place for it.
It
Yep.
is absolutely.
Troma is the perfect
Isn't
place for
that
this.
just isn't that just the queer story? You don't fit in anywhere, and then you suddenly find something, and you're like, oh yes.
Have you ever kept in contact with any of the cast or Lloyd or anyone that you met in production of the film?
I do stay in touch with quite a lot of people, and I still work with some of them, like Susie Chameleon, who was an assistant director and also played the role of Tracy in the film. We're still working together, and Jeff Christian and I are still best friends, and we've been working on several movie projects since, either as Jeff as an actor or with Jeff as a composer. So yeah, for most part, I'm still in touch with everybody.
What do you hope the legacy of, because it's not done yet, it's not over yet, because it's now on streaming platforms, it's on Troma now. What do you hope the legacy of this cult musical would be? If you could predict or hope for something for Spidarlings, what do you hope it could be and what it should be?
At the moment, I'm really just like excited with what is happening at the time, with people just discovering it, and hopefully it's going to continue like this with just under the radar, and the right kind of people just find it themselves, which I think it helps with the kind of strange film and queer film that it is. It's not going to be ever a mainstream movie, and I don't need it to be. It's a movie for the freaks and the people like me.
And the anarchist.
Yeah.
And the anarchist and everybody. Hades and Mary, do you have any further questions for our fabulous director, or any comments or any observations, or ask? I know, Mary, you love some behind the scenes stuff.
I do. Well, okay, so a couple. First off, I lost one of my buddies. First off, I tried to do the snake bite, I failed. One of the funniest quotes or just lines in the movie was when, she finally kicked the guy's ass.
I'm just gonna borrow your chainsaw.
Yeah, like, can I just borrow this chainsaw real quick? It's gonna go take care of it. Like the nonchalant way in which I was like, can I just borrow this for a second? Like that killed me. Usually I asked about like the funny stuff that happened, like stuff that you'd put on like a blooper reel or whatever, not somebody dying on the cast. That's pretty fucked, but that's funny stuff, maybe. Like little something silly that happened. Like either you kept in or like you had to do the take a bunch of times or something.
We had to take a lot of scenes a lot of times, especially in the bar where we were shooting was just underneath the train. So every 2 minutes we had the train driving by. I remember when we were filming with Rusty Gove, who played Alfred, the villain in the film. He was one of the original Oompa Loompas, so we just had him for one day, and he was supposed to be slapped by Matilda. So every time she slapped him, the train came by. So no matter how much we timed it, so he ended up being slapped something like 40 times at one point. Even his hearing aid fell out of his ear, and we were like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." But he was just so cool and so chill about it. So he ended up being slapped a lot. So
The bad guy, back to my I had a couple of things here. The Hammer Will Fall is a total jam from that song. That was a great song. I liked that one. But he's just, like they're swirling and twirling around the bar. They're going under the table, over the seats and everything. They're just chasing each other. Was that supposed to be like an artistic sort of PG-13 view of like a darker theme, such as, rape or something like that? Because it's kind of, is that?
It is supposed to be like sexual assault and trying to possess her and trying to assault her. So, but I didn't want to go too extreme with that optic.
Okay, that's fair. So I was like, I bet this is what it is, and the people watching the film with me were like, I don't know, is it? Maybe. And I'm like, I think it is, because I don't think this person wanted to put like actual going for it in the film, you know, like that's a little fucked up. I think this is supposed to be an artistic, like, sexual assault sort of thing without actually showing such atrocities on film. And I appreciated that. I liked how that went. It drug on a little bit, but the song was a jam, so I didn't care. Like that was great.
It was, yeah.
And then he had a drill for a dong, and that was a lot. And I was like, he has a dick drill. That's drag as fuck.
That's content.
I'm just gonna borrow your chainsaw. And then meanwhile, Eden gives birth to Rosemary's egg sac. Now it starts to get good. Oh, the babies ate the landlord, so it's a love story.
We're jerks. I'm sorry.
So that was my end of movie review there. It's a love story. They ate the landlord.
Was there any sort of special affinity that you had for spiders? Where did the idea of the spiders come from?
I always loved spiders since I was a kid, and Rainer the tarantula was my pet tarantula that we used in the film.
Oh, what was its name?
Rainer.
Right.
Oh, so it was
He
filmed
passed away
in your.
as well.
Hmm. So it was filmed in your room with your own spider.
Yes.
Mhm.
So it was very up close and intimate and personal in terms of having these people in your life. And it's so interesting to see, like, I've never directed anything, but for these characters to be, you know, having your pet spider and being in your room and going through situations that you went through, was it was it sort of like a surreal thing to watch characters act out and like some of the things that were said to you in life? Was it sort of a surreal thing to watch this happen as you directed?
Ah, yes and no, but at the same time, with the whole surreal elements to the film and the horror elements, I could step back a bit and like not make it too uncanny valley of my own life.
Because it's such a fascinating thing. I mean, because I've always wondered, you know, when you're directing something in term that has some sort of nod to your own life, if you feel like you're watching yourself in certain moments, that just like you said, uncanny valley. And I wondered if there was any moments when you were filming this particular film where you entered uncanny valley, where you're like, wait, I'm making a movie.
In some places, like I said, even like living in the same set that we used, there was sort of like never really like a going home at the end of the shoot, because I would still be like in the same room at the end of it. So life and the film tended to blend a lot together in weird ways.
What are you working on now in terms of do you have any stories in the works? Do you have any film ideas that are in the works? What are you up to now?
I'm currently writing a book together with Beth Warburton, which is called To Hell and High Water, which is going to be out towards the end of the year. And I'm also in pre-production for my second film, a queer sci-fi movie called The Moon is a Hologram, which I'm hopefully going to start shooting this year, and which will hopefully not take 5 years to make.
And maybe it could be Troma. Maybe Troma.
Who knows?
Could you drop a little hints about that movie, or is it on the?
It's going to be basically like a satire of 1950s sci-fi movies like them and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Very paranoid, lots of weird special effects. And it's going to be an alien invasion film, only like that. I never like the kind of tropes when you have like alien movies and then all the aliens are queer or have weird um, characterization. So it's going to be the humans that are going to be the queer and full of life, while the aliens are going to be more like cis straight society, kind of basically the representation of it. So I think
So it's turning that trope on its head.
yes.
Good.
Oh, that's awesome. What is the book about that you're going to be releasing at the end of the year?
The book it's going to be a redemption story with a carnival background, and I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about the plot yet. So,
Well, hopefully this turns into something. So when you do get this new movie out and you do get this new book out and it's on Waterstone shelves, etc., hopefully it will turn people back to or at least raise awareness of Spidarlings. And you could say, actually, I did this. This is my first movie. And there could be little screenings popping up and things of that nature. Is that what you hope, or your
That would be
fingers are crossed?
wonderful. I would love to. I would absolutely love to just do some little screenings for Spiderlings. And like you said, with costumes, that would be amazing.
I love it, and I'm sorry, I just laughed so hard at that quote of, I heard that if you're out, you could live at the beach in Thailand. That's so you. It's just such a condescending thing. I just love it. I think that's one of the most hilarious quotes, and I think it's genius. And it takes a couple times for you to go back and watch it, and you're like, you find little treasures of really cheeky lines and really cheeky quotes. And I just love it. And it's one of those musicals that you need to go back a couple times to really get it. And I love how Hades and Mary connected with it in a way that was completely different the way I connected with it. Have you heard fans reach out to you and say, "Oh my God, I loved this movie," or "Oh my God, I loved seeing, two queer characters in a horror musical"? Has that meant something to you to have people connect with you and reach out to you about Spidarlings?
It's always such a surreal feeling when suddenly somebody reaches out and likes my film, because for so long, like I said, it just kind of went under the radar, and the older it got, the more I thought it was just gonna get forgotten. And then suddenly I have people sending me fan art from the film, and it's just like such an emotional, touching moment every time something like this happens. Like, I'm not prepared for it.
Well, you were prepared for it, and we are so appreciative that you took the time to talk with us. It meant a lot. And we could edit this out or not. The reason that we had to postpone to today, do you want to tell them about the state that you live in America and the holiday that it was yesterday?
Absolutely. This is New Jersey where we live, and cannabis is legal here. And 420, which yesterday was also a palindrome, 4/20/2024. The date was a palindrome. So we had our own little celebration
Boy,
yesterday.
did we.
We had a fun time yesterday, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be very legible at talking,
I know, I
after
told James,
celebrating the
I was
the
like,
high holiday.
you gotta understand, we might not be at our best, or we might be at our very best. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll either be at top tier or we will not be able to be understood.
Honestly, I think it would have been in top tier. I
Yeah,
think we would have been all right. We handled it pretty well.
we did.
In the vein, it would have been very in the vein of Spidarlings as two anarchist
Yeah.
queer characters coming just high off of their ass.
It would.
Yep.
It would have.
Half of the crew and actors were high off their ass during the making of the film.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
there
yeah,
you go.
too.
There.
That
Well,
would
I
be
mean,
us.
everyone had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could tell that they were having a good time in the film. I couldn't tell that they were high because I thought everyone in Reefer Madness was high, but apparently that was the opposite case.
Yeah. I mean, at night, yes, but
But we thank you so much, Selene, for taking the time. And we do hope, and we're going to keep pushing Spidarlings. We have people reach out to us and say, "Oh my God, what is that musical? Where can I watch it?" And I always point them in the direction of Troma Now and a couple of the platforms in the States where you can stream it. And so whenever we broadcast or advertise Spidarlings, there is interest because people are really dying and hungry for some new musical. People get tired of the same cult musicals over and over again. And the thing about cult musicals is that you watch one and then it opens up a door to another one, and again and again and again. And before you know it, you're on a never ending quest of these really wonderful underground original musicals that may have been forgotten at one point, but are re-embraced later. And I think that's what you need to remember, is that like it may take a while for Spidarlings to get discovered, but it is getting discovered and people are embracing it as we've embraced it. And so many people are going to embrace it, the queer community. And I just think the best is yet to come with this movie.
Thank you so much. And it's so amazing to be on this channel. I've had a look through your channel and I was just like so amazed with all the videos you've done. Like The Apple, I love that movie so much. So I was
We are just been blessed to have these people, and they're so interested. Ray Shell, who we talked to, he was like, it's sort of hard because when you do a project, I guess, and you go away, you forget about it,
Yeah.
And it's up to audiences, and it's up to production companies, and it's up to studios to sort of embrace it or not embrace it. And so he's like, it took years before he realized that the apple was a thing. And he's embraced it now, but I still think there's with Ray, when we interviewed him, he was like, did people really like this movie? And I'm like, yeah, people really do. I mean, we reach out to some people sometimes and they're like, how do you even know about this? Like, there's a movie called Vicious Lips, which you
I
have to
love
watch.
Vicious Lips. I love
Oh my God, Vicious Lips, you're right on our alley. Please come on an episode and talk about a cult musical with us.
Yes,
Please,
come
we
back.
would love to have you.
it.
We would love to have you.
Yeah.
Now that we
absolutely.
figured out
Yeah.
how to do the Zoom,
Yeah.
now you can join us.
That'd be great. Oh my God, would you join us? That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
we-
love to.
Because we just talked to the lady that was in
Yeah.
Vicious Lips.
Yes,
Oh,
amazing.
I found her on Facebook and she's like, I think her first question was, how do you know about that movie? And I was like, everybody, well, not everybody, but everybody should know about Vicious Lips. And
Everybody
so,
should know about it. It's amazing.
yeah, and we just talked to the guy who played Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. And it turned into like a church. We haven't posted it yet, but it turned into like a church service. And we're just like, Renee and I have a theory that he really is Jesus.
listen,
He had to
honestly,
be.
I can't stop thinking of
It is. But he's. I'm gonna
ready to
edit
go
this
to
out.
Sweden, not Australia.
I'm gonna edit this out. Don't worry. He's a very interesting character, but he lives in Sweden in
Yeah.
a cabin in the woods with like no outside connection, and he's part of like this movement where they believe aliens created the earth and things of that nature, which is cool.
Fine enough.
Sounds
It's fun enough.
cool. There's like so much beyond that.
They're all peace, love, and happiness.
Yeah.
And also aliens.
look, man,
Aliens are the reason for the
Never.
season.
angel, aliens, fucking tomato.
Oh, I know what one we need to do next. We need to, if you've ever seen Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh, long
That's a
ago.
long time ago. I need to
Billion
read
years
to that
ago.
one.
Another lifetime ago.
Oh my
Another
God.
lifetime
we
ago.
We add you into our cult musicals chat.
Yeah.
We will.
You
But
co-host.
yes, when we talk about things, we've got things down the pipeline. So if you ever want to join, because I'm in the UK as well, but I'm from America, so they're Renee and all of them, they're way
Across the
behind.
pond.
We're in the burning Americas.
American
Burning?
flag.
No, I'm talking about you're behind in terms of time.
Oh, well, we're kind of falling apart,
Yeah.
The whole world's falling apart. But
Yeah,
we'll
England
get
is
there.
getting there too.
We'll get there. But we will
Dixon and
definitely
Boris
reach out
Johnson.
we'll definitely reach out and ask if you're ever interested in
love
dissecting or
to.
even seeing a brand new cult musical. There's a lot of movies, and I'll end with this. There's a lot of movies that aren't streaming, and it makes me so mad. It's like, so what we're doing is like, there's a subject, a section on our website that I'm trying to build right now to like take all these movies that aren't streaming and put them on there to stream for free. Because like, believe it or not, Rocky Horror Sequel Shock Treatment is not streaming anywhere.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even buy it you can't even buy it from Amazon or anything like that.
I
So
still
it's
have
on
the
YouTube.
old DVD for Shock Treatment, which is how I can watch it, which personally, I don't know if that's blasphemy or not, but I prefer to the original Rocky Horror.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
Bitching in the Kitchen, that's my favorite song ever.
I mean, that's
I see Renee and Hades have a special affinity to Rocky Horror because they're a part of Rocky Horror Troops. I prefer Shock Treatment to the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
So have you ever seen Shock Treatment with like a live audience?
No, I sadly haven't.
So my first watch through a Shock Treatment, I was like, okay, this is weird, it's fun, but I don't know if it's caught me yet, So I watched it one time to understand it a little bit. Then I watched it with a live audience at the RockyCon.
live
And
Shadowcast.
live Shadowcast, yes, live Shadowcast.
And audience.
Live audience, live Shadowcast, and it was changed the whole way I viewed the whole movie, and it has a very special place in my heart now because the live Shadowcast doing the thing with the costumes, the props, so much fun. I love a good Shadowcast. It's a lot of fun to go see. And then when you get the audience participation involved, you feel like you're part of the audience that's watching,
Yeah.
everything go down. And it's surreal. And I had to, describe to a couple of our friends who had never seen shock treatment before. They're like, what's going on? And I'm like, so the general vibe right now is the audience, like we all have, the crowd mentality and the audience participation hath overcome us all. So when they scream at the screen, have fun and scream at the screen with them. Just watch it. We're all part of an audience and we are watching whatever the heck's going on here.
That sounds so fun.
It's a game show. It's great. And it was so much fun.
I would
like,
like to experience
absolutely.
it that way, because the only way I've ever seen it was at home on my television. So that just sounds like a completely different
Oh my
experience.
goodness. It's an amazing experience. If you ever get the chance to go
Absolutely, I would love
to if you can ever come to the Americas for like RockyCon, they always do shock treatment. This year when is it? Late August, and it's in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It's a bit
But
far.
do they always do RockyCon? Do they always do RockyCon, or is it hosted by different troops?
Different troops. Next year is the 50th anniversary or something, 45th, I don't know. Big number. Ends in either a 5 or a 0, so it's a big one.
50.
So next year's gonna be in Rhode Island, and that one's gonna be huge.
I will
So-
send you, Selene. I will send you. So a couple years ago, in 2014,
Yeah,
they put shock treatment on the stage here as a musical.
they did.
And yeah, so it was really, I only saw it twice, but because Richard O'Brien was really weird about it, so he only let it run for, I want to say 3 months.
Yeah,
But his stipulation is that it could not be in a big theater, and it had to be very intimate. Like, because the Rocky Horror Show started at the attic of the King's Head Theater, so, or something of that nature. So shock treatment was very confined to, I think it didn't fit more than 70 people. But the director sent me the link on Twitter because somebody leaked it. Excuse me, shock treatment, the stage musical. So I'll send it to you.
oh, thank you so much. I'd love to see
It was in 2016. They changed the plot a little bit because this was during like the Trump Hillary Clinton election thing. So they make Farley flavors like Trump. But I'll send you the link, and we should be talking to the guy who played Cosmo soon in it. So the stage musical's different, but I'll send it to you on Instagram, Act 1 and Act 2.
Wonderful.
That's what I was looking at to make sure it was still on there, and that's what the noise came from. So I'll send it to you as soon as I get off.
I'm really excited. I would love to see that. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. It
Thank
was so
you so
nice
much
to
for
meet
having
you.
me.
We love
We'll
your
see you
movie.
soon. We will see you
Awesome.
soon.
I'd love
Yes,
to.
please join
It
us
was
on
lovely
some.
to talk with you.
Anytime, I'm always up for it.
Yes.
Join us on more, James. Put it in the chat.
All right, see you soon.
Bye.
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 Bye.